What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where Graham G.S. and Matthews break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the May 23rd, 2022 edition of Raw Talk. We had Jackie Redmond back this week alongside Matt Camp. Redmond was gone for a few weeks doing the Stanley Cup stuff, I believe, so she was back alongside Matt Camp in the studio. Their special guest analyst for this week was Sam Roberts, so I guess this was their first time interacting, Redmond and Roberts. So Redmond was very excited, Camp not so much, to have Roberts on the show, obviously joking. They start off the show by running down the biggest headlines from Monday's Raw before recapping the six-man tag team match that opened the show that saw Riddle and the Profits, I believe, win, right? I think they did. They beat the Usos and Sami Zayn in six-man tag team action. Matt Camp says, and Redmond as well, they kind of praise the fact that this is a more serious side of Riddle, and he's kind of upping up the intensity and stuff like that, with Randy Orton being gone right now. They also replay the King's Court with Veer Mahan, where Veer very aggressively addressed the Mysterios, and the Mysterios came out and got the better of Veer. Lawler, we hear from him backstage. He's one of the interviews on this week's show. He says he didn't know what to expect coming into this, King's Court edition, this edition of the King's Court. And he says that Veer has no sense of humor. So he tells Kevin Patrick a joke. Kevin Patrick tells him a joke in return. And that was it. Kevin Patrick was the best part of this entire little segment here. I really could not care less about anything involving Jerry Lawler. But Patrick made this bearable with his very bad joke. And I remember, too, I didn't write it down here, but he had said, "What do you call an Irishman that hangs outside all day?" Or hangs outside in the day in the sun all day, or whatever it was. And Jerry Lawler says what? Kevin Patrick says, porch on the, or patio on the porch, or something like that. It was really bad, but the fact that he took such great, pride in that joke was what made it funny. So Kevin Patrick's a gem. He actually celebrated the birthday the other day on Friday, so happy belated birthday to him. Anyway, so with Sam Roberts, he says the King's Court edition, that edition of King's Court went exactly the way that he would have expected, because this stuff always ends the way that it does with these talking segments, and that being in complete and total anarchy and chaos and brawling and stuff like that. They mentioned how it was sad to see Riddle get emotional, and they're not ready to see RK Bro end, and I'm sure it won't be the end of RK Bro. I'm sure Orton will be back at some point, whether it be next month, in the next few months, 6 months from now. I assume he'll be back by SummerSlam, because tentatively that was the plan, and SummerSlam's in late July this year, so he might not be back until July. But they're very clearly setting up Roman and Riddle for the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. If not Hell in the Cell, but it doesn't sound like Roman's going to be on that show. It sounds like they're setting that for Money in the Bank instead in early July. That being said, Matt Camp says that Riddle will want to take the Bloodline down one by one, like I said, and will hopefully culminate in a Riddle-Roman match at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. That's my opinion. He didn't say that. Sam Roberts, as far as Cody Rhodes goes, he beat The Miz on Monday by disqualification after Seth Rollins got involved. But he said that the Cody Rhodes honeymoon phase is starting to slow down here, and Rollins rather has been here the whole time, so he's pro Seth Rollins. Jackie Redmond randomly says that Cody Rhodes dresses better. So there was that. They then recap the Becky Lynch versus Asuka main event that saw Becky Lynch beat Asuka to get added to the Raw Women's Championship match at Hell in a Cell. Matt Camp says that Bianca will welcome all challengers, but that a triple threat match has got to be not ideal for her to be defending her championship in, and she'll want to prove that she's the best. They then transition into recapping Alexa Bliss versus Nikki A.S.H. that saw Alexa Bliss win in a matter of minutes over her former friend. We hear backstage from Alexa Bliss, who says, I think with Sarah Schreiber, and Alexa Bliss says that, she missed being in the ring with Nikki, and they kind of went their own ways, and Alexa Bliss chose her own path, and she chose Nikki A.S.H. and being almost the superhero or whatever. And she's very excited to see where her momentum takes her. They then recap Bobby Lashley versus MVP. MVP won that match by countout to earn the opportunity to choose the stipulation for the Lashley-Omos match at Hell in a Cell. Jackie Redmond says that Kevin Owens, as far as the Kevin Owens stuff, Kevin Owens had some good points. So she's Team Kevin Owens here, being a fellow Canadian, that would make sense. From there, they recap Ezekiel versus Chad Gable, which will lead into, obviously Ezekiel won again via pinfall. And we're going to be getting Ezekiel versus Kevin Owens at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Ezekiel says backstage in an interview with Kevin Patrick that he hopes that he made his brother proud before being, interrupted by MVP and Omos. Omos doesn't say anything, but MVP says, I have the opportunity to choose this stipulation for the Lashley-Omos match at Hell in a Cell, so I'm choosing, and I held my breath at this point thinking he would say Hell in the Cell, and I'm like, please do not say Hell in the Cell. For the match type, not the event. And he said, we're going to choose a handicap match. Thankfully, this is not Extreme Rules, where it's like that would be extremely fucking uneventful. And Extreme Rules is far from extreme at this point, but a handicap match, I mean, of all the stipulations you could choose, I guess that makes sense to kind of, up the odds over Bobby Lashley. That one could go either way. I would like to see Bobby Lashley win by pinning MVP to end the feud, and that would be it. Because that's really who the feud is with MVP. So honestly, I like that idea. You get MVP in the ring, Bobby Lashley can give him his comeuppance and get his revenge that way by pinning MVP and also beating Omos at the same time. So I don't mind the stipulation. That makes sense. It was better than doing a fucking Hell in a Cell match. And we've seen handicap Hell in a Cell matches before. We had one in 2006 with DX and Vince versus, Big Show and the McMahons versus DX in a 3-on-2 handicap match. And we got another one in 2013 with Ryback and Paul Heyman versus CM Punk, which was just fucking abysmal. So hopefully this will be better, but I'm not holding my breath. Robert says that Lashley's emotions get in the way, and that's why he's lost his last few matches with MVP and Omos at WrestleMania Backlash. It's going to be difficult for him to win at Hell in the Cell. Matt Camp argues the opposite and says that Bobby Lashley is prepared, and this gives him an advantage because he has more opportunities to beat more people in that match. He may not be able to pin Omos again like he did at WrestleMania, but he can pin MVP and still win the match that way. Sam Roberts is just befuddled at the fact that Matt Camp thinks it's an advantage that Bobby Lashley's in a handicap match, and he doesn't see how that could be an advantage at all. Matt Camp says that gaining momentum has got to be a leading factor for both men right now, leading into Money in the Bank, leading into SummerSlam, and leading into the UK show. Both men want momentum on their side, and a win at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view would definitely accomplish that for either guy. And that was about it. Sam Roberts just kind of argues the opposite, downplays Lashley wins, because Matt Camp had mentioned, Lashley has won before. He won the steel cage match. He won at WrestleMania. And Robert says, the steel cage match he won, technically on a technicality, with Omos throwing him through the cage wall, which is true. At WrestleMania, Lashley won fair and square, but Roberts argues that was pre-MVP. So, he's pro-Omos and MVP right now. Matt Camp and Redmond sound like they're pro-Lashley, and that was about it. Very ho-hum edition of Raw Talk. Nothing really to go out of your way to see aside from the Kevin Patrick joke, which I thought was great. It was so bad it was good. That was funny. We heard from, it was kind of newsworthy. They announced the stipulation for MVP and, or not MVP, but Omos versus Lashley, now a handicap match at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, so we got that. And that was really about it. Really nothing else to note from this edition of Raw Talk. Kind of business as usual. So those are my thoughts on the May 23rd, 2022 edition of Raw Talk. Thank you guys for checking out my review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Be sure to hit the bell button as well to be notified every time a new video goes up. Stay tuned for more daily content here on the channel. Have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.